Welcome back. This is Fuse. And I realize I have a lot of time to study things that I study. And I realize that a lot of the people that I am speaking to, those of you who may be listening, may have a lot less time to marinate in, immerse yourselves, and build daily relationships with these ideas that I'm talking about. Although I am going to encourage you to find ways to make it a daily practice. I do believe that that is increasingly important for us to make the way for the experiences and the relationships that we want, including the relationships that we want with ourselves, because that is what feeds and makes possible healthy and dynamic relationships with other people and the more than human world, as a number of my teachers say. So I'm encouraging you to find ways. And at the same time, I understand that you may not know how. And so let's talk the ways that you can make whatever practices you choose to work with. But I'm going to keep it to your astrological practice, because that's the theme that we're on right now. We will change themes and threads, but right now, what I am interested in exploring is this question of astrology and how to work with it, and which lens or system is most effective or appropriate, or et cetera, useful, meaningful to us in any given time. And I started out with astrology like a lot of people did. Actually, I don't know if that's true. What I remember is having my first journalism assignment in, I think it was the junior high newspaper. And I volunteered to take on the astrology column. Astrology columns were very popular. This was back when we had physical papers. And I was very interested in astrology. And I think at that time, I think Rob Bresney was writing. I think he's been writing forever. And I really liked that style because it was lighthearted, very clever, and fun to read. And I think I didn't have a depth of knowledge with astrology, so I couldn't really go into soul transformative conversations with people. But I suppose in a way I cut my teeth on journalism and astrological writing sitting in that journalism class. And it was very difficult actually to come up with, I cannot remember how frequent our paper was. I think it was a monthly paper. Even writing a monthly article, it wasn't just the astrological column that I handled, but even just writing monthly, it took me some time, because when I went into college, I thought I would be a writer, a journalist specifically. And it took me some time to realize that writing on deadline was like beyond my mental capacity. I couldn't figure out how to successfully roll with that rhythm. But that's how I developed a consistent practice with astrological language. And I think where I was starting with this particular sentence or this idea is that we often start our astrological explorations by reading a column, or I guess these days, going to some YouTuber or some podcast and listening to our like weekly or monthly astrology. That seems to be a way a lot of us get into it, and that seems to be where a lot of us spend our time and focus. Like we don't go much further beyond listening to someone tell us what the energy of the day, month, or week will be. And I think there's even apps now that can break that down to the hour. So that's a good place to begin because it gives us vocabulary and it helps us find a position within the language. And then for those of us who do something with what we're hearing, we can begin to we can begin to become aware of our habits and patterns, things that we might want to enhance in our personalities, and qualities that we might want to refine or repair or correct. What I would like to do with these conversations that I'm having with you, and this is often true for anything that I'm talking about. I have worked with clients in meditation classes, and I've worked with clients in nutritional counseling classes. I have had a very rich professional life, and I have been able to study some things and go deep with them, and then bring those tools to other people and help other people find ways to go deep with those tools. And that is why I am coming into this space and having this conversation. So when it comes to finding your way to creating an ongoing relationship with your astrological signatures, with your celestial, cosmic signature, I didn't want to use the word identity there because at some point I'm going to ask us to step away from the identity, from like identifying with these archetypes and imagery, because that's also a good practice. But there are ways to come into it. And whether you're working with tropical or sidereal or some other perspective on how we lay out the chart and name what planet is where and what planet is talking to what planet or asteroid or whatever else you're working with. What I'm saying there is it doesn't matter to me in this moment what system you're using, because I think in this case, this is another example of how the many ways that humanity can look at something will lead us to similar conclusions. Our experiences on the way to getting there might be different, but if you're looking for self-understanding, however you choose to work with your chart in whatever lineage is not the main attraction. It's the relationship that you build with that teaching that is going to help you develop whatever the main attraction is. So, having said all of that, one of the ways that I encourage people to develop a personal relationship with the chart is to sit with each of the planets or each of the constellations or each of the aspects or each of the houses. And that's 4 really delicious places to start. You could also look at the ascendant, descendant, IC and IM, or I'm sorry, midheaven and IC. So those angles, and come into relationship with your idea about and your interaction with the idea of something that's ascending, or something that is at the height of its expression, or something that's at the root of its expression, or something that is perhaps declining in its expression. Um, come into your own language and relationship with what it is to be influenced by Venus, or what it is to carry the energy of Mars, or what it is to be impacted or in relationship with Pluto or Saturn or Mercury. And what that involves is going out and learning about those personalities, those characters. And we do have the time to become more educated about ourselves. We 100% must have the time to become more educated about ourselves. That this is one of the ways that we claim, reclaim, some people are using the terminology claw back, stand in, accept, embody our agency and our self-authorship, rather than continually tuning into other people's ideas about who and how we should be. So you can go to the readers and go to the teachers and let them share the language with you and let them orient you into the language. And then at some point, begin to develop a relationship with your own language. That could look like having a journaling practice and spending whatever the Virgo cycle is. So a couple episodes ago, I talked about learning that Virgo is approximately a 48-day cycle. So for 48 days, you might talk to Virgo and all of the things related to Virgo, which would include Mercury. I think it would include Venus personally, but that's my personal relationship with the parts of Virgo that really speak to me, and that's the thing for you. Now, I do stay tuned in to what other voices have said about these I'm going to call them characters. I'm really working with expanding my vocabulary away from archetypes. We'll see how I do with that. So I'm going to call them characters until I find other words. So I am completely fine going in and learning from other people, experiencing other people's readings, because I understand how to recognize when something really jumps out at me, and I get a bit of a message or a clear message. Go deeper with this on your own. In other words, my mind is voracious enough, like it's got a big enough appetite that I'm not going to stop at what somebody tells me about something. If it's something I'm interested in, and I am interested in a lot of things. So what I'm saying to you is it's the idea of the echo chamber. So I have my own ideas and experiences and relationship with these characters. And also I am curious about what the larger culture or the culture of origins had to say about these things that I'm interested in. And I encourage you to do the same. I will also, so for a period of time in my early 20s and 30s, I spent a lot of time in goddess communities and just learning a lot about the goddess and goddess practices and different, and the goddess is represented in different cultures. And so when it comes to astrological understanding, I look for Venus, for example. I'm not going to stop at the Greek and Roman goddesses. I'm looking for other representations, other cultural understandings of what it is to love something or someone or self, to have a value system, to develop, create, and advocate for beauty. I'm going to look for that in other cultures. How do other cultures celebrate and practice this? How do they protect this quality? The same thing with thought, and this shows up often with me when I listen to folks often talk about Mars and Aries in a very limited way. And it has begun to say a lot to me about the culture, the cultural background, the cultural identity of the people, of the way that we talk about Mars and Aries. And so one day my memory just brought up all of these other examples of warrior language and codes of conduct, and the way that some cultures emphasize the need to study and learn and to be a strong student in addition to mastering the power of the body. I'm thinking of Henry V. We watched that movie. I had an English teacher who was just in love with Kenneth Branagh. And so we did the typical Shakespeare thing in English. And Henry V was one of the movies that we watched. And the scene that has stayed with me all these years later is the scene when the pages were slaughtered. So the boys who took care of the horses and made sure that the soldiers had what they needed. And I've not watched this for a very long time, so this is the story in my head about what that scene was and what it was communicating to me. And I believe it was Henry's, his group, I don't know what to call them, but they were appalled at that violation of conduct between warring peoples. It had previously been understood that the children were to be untouched. They were not to be harmed deliberately. And that has stayed with me. There is also, I grew up in a military family. All of my parents served in the military, and I have grandparents who served, and the military is in my psyche and it's in me. And there are codes of conduct in the military that I don't see other uniformed service people being compelled to honor and obey. That to me is the difference between bad warriorship and immature warriorship and a refined, elevated warriorship. And I'm talking about the codes of conduct and the fact that there's accountability for it. There's expectation that if something is violated, there will be reprisal. There will be consequences to be paid. So that for me, when I hear people talking about Aries and Mars and how limited our cultural relationship is with what it is to have that energy, I feel like it is time, and clearly we have events that are telling us it's time. It is time for us to mature in our understanding of and our activity in terms of Martian energy and Aries energy. That's just, and actually, now that I say that, and so this is what will start to happen for you. So we have the fire signs, Aries, Sagittarius, and Leo. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. So Aries is considered the child, the beginner, the initiator, the catalyst. And it actually goes Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, but I like Aries, Sagittarius, Leo, because what happened in my mind is that fire energy of Aries, that young, motivating energy of Aries takes us into Sagittarius with the willingness to learn. Part of the Sagittarian psyche is going outside of ourselves and outside of what we know to learn about how other people do things or how others do things. When we have more experience and exposure to the broader world, there is, for many people, a wisdom that starts developing. There is a capacity for disagreement that starts to develop. There is a long range vision that starts to develop. We mature, we expand out. And that is part of what Leo is about as leadership. I think of Leo as leadership more than I think of Leo as an entertainer or even as a creative presence. My mind always goes to the leonine leadership, the heart leadership, which is what a warrior who has matured through their cycle of maturity, whatever it is, battle worn and tested and exposed to the peoples that they're coming across. King Solomon comes to mind, wise leadership, someone who went through phases and stages of development to learn how to become this wise, wisdom, heart-led leader. That's my relationship with King Solomon. May not be yours. So what just happened for me there is what I would like to have happen for you in whatever symbolic system you're working with. The astrology just happens to be really accessible to a lot of people, but you may have some other system that you can do this with. And it is working through your own relationship with these concepts so that when you look at your chart, you begin, it speaks to you directly. And you're not necessarily having to look at it through the systems of organization that we have, Hellenistic astrology or shamanic astrology. I mean, these are all fantastic, and I encourage you to learn them. At some point, though, it is possible to come into a living relationship where the elements of the chart are speaking to you regardless of their placement in the chart. You just begin to develop your own experience with what it is to carry the Aries archetype. Again, trying to find new words, but it's hard sometimes. So if you feel like it, share in the comments. I'm always curious to hear about what archetypes, what qualities, what characteristics, what symbolic personalities or what symbols people struggle with and why, and what symbols people really resonate with and how you resonate. That's a different question than why. Why could be something like, because I like it, it makes me feel good about myself, or it inspires me to be kind. Whereas how is like, well, how have you expressed kindness through your understanding of that archetype or that quality? So this was fun. I am enjoying these conversations. You might start to pick up on the fact that I'm talking about a specific subject. I'm focused on astrology, but what I'm saying can actually be applied anywhere in your life. And that is really, really what I'm going for here. Because the world that we interact with is it's a symbolic experience. It is constantly talking to us, and we can talk back with it and have this incredibly rich and engaged relationship with our moment to moment, day to day life. It does get to be exhausting sometimes, and sometimes you might have to just say, I just want to sit and watch some Netflix or Spotify it out for a while or whatever. But what I'm saying is, we can take our symbolic identity, our symbolic selves off of these pieces of paper and apply them to the world that we're interacting with. Sometimes it just takes creativity and persistence, and a willingness to hear ourselves. So thank you so much for listening, and we will meet again.